Hello, my name is Kaori, and this is my YouTube introduction video. Now, a lot of my friends have told me over the past year or so that I am a really inspiring person, and I'd like to share that inspiration with as many people as I can. But first, I think you need to understand a little bit about what makes me me. So over the next 10 minutes, roughly speaking, I'm going to give you a rundown of my life story and what it meant to me. Now, my full name is Kaori Cameron Kuranai, and I am transgendered. I will get to that. I will get to that in a minute. I was born in 1988 in Hibbing, Minnesota, and my entire life has been spent within 20 miles of this town. I don't get around much. I'm kind of a shut-in. Working on that. Anywho, most of my early childhood was spent bouncing around between various homes, my mom and dad, my aunt. For a while there, it was between my mom and between my dad, who I don't know a damn thing about him. He left when I was 4. So I have some daddy issues. And then at around 2 years old, I went into this foster home with this wonderful couple named Mary and Roger. I don't know anything else about them except that when I lived there, I slept in a small bedroom in a crib. I can remember the room was dark, didn't have a window or nothing, and it was painted blue. I remember they had every Disney movie that had been made up to that point, and I used to watch them every morning. I vividly remember waking up one morning and climbing out of my crib and going and sitting in the living room and watching Disney movies. And I think I made it through 2 before they even woke up. I also remember they had a piano in their basement and this huge red ball that I used to play with constantly. Probably not actually all that big, but at 2 years old it was taller than I was, so it was big. Now, I lived with them for a while, and then I moved in with my mom and my first stepdad, and I lived with them for a few years. And due to a bunch of crap that was going on back then, I ended up being placed in another foster home. This time, it was permanent foster care. I was raised in it. Well, this foster home that I lived in at the time was way out in the country with an incredibly Christian lady who pretty well forced Christianity down my throat to the point where I can't even walk into a church without getting irritated because of that. There's nothing against the religion. It's just I can't do it anymore. Anyway, so I lived out there from about the time I was 5 to about the time I was 8, and I have no real strong memories of communicating with this woman or her husband at all. You know, the only times that I do remember were special occasions like Christmas and Halloween, whenever I was in trouble, and whenever a social worker came over. And she was not really a pleasant lady. She acted all, sweet and innocent and the great mother figure when there was somebody important around, but she really wasn't. She didn't give a damn about us. And we lived way out in the country, so there was really nobody for me to hang out with except the other kids that were there, and most of them were kind of dicks. I didn't really like them. I hung out with them because I had no other choice. I eventually got myself kicked out of that foster home. I had a bit of a temper on me, and I threatened to kill her. Not all my fault. I did have a temper, yes, but when you put an 8-year-old on antidepressants without consulting a therapist, that kind of stuff happens. So I completely lost it, and they threw me out, and I moved into this house in Chisholm, and everything went very well. I was living with this wonderful lady who did everything she could to, try and be a proper mother figure to me and actually raise me, but I was so emotionally shut down and closed off and living in my own little world because I didn't know anything else that she eventually just kind of gave up because I never responded to her. Two things happened to me while I was living there that changed my life. The first one was my discovery of anime, when one night, realizing that I no longer had a set bedtime, I was trolling through channels at like midnight and I stumbled across Dragon Ball Z. I have since seen every episode of Dragon Ball Z and every episode of Dragon Ball GT and about half of Dragon Ball. By the time I actually discovered Dragon Ball, it was a little too Saturday morning cartoon. Much as I love the characters, it just got boring really quickly. But I was so used to the intense fighting, I stumbled into it during the battle with Frieza on Namek. So the fact that they couldn't even do half of that crap really put me off. Anyway, the reason I mentioned Dragon Ball Z is because at this point in my life, I considered myself an orphan. I was so detached from my family that for a while there, they were pretty much people I went to visit. I understood that they were my family, but I didn't feel like they cared. And I felt completely alone for the first half of my life. And I discovered Dragon Ball Z, and the more I watched it, the more I got attached to the characters. I eventually just kind of ended up adopting Goku as a father figure. And I know that kind of sounds really sad, but I honestly think he's probably one of the, of all the people I could have chosen to emulate, who better than the ultimate good guy? You know, he's just so incredibly pure-hearted that it would probably make a lot of people sick. But he was, and still is, my hero. He is my adopted cartoon daddy. And he taught me what it meant to be a good person and what it meant to fight for what you believe in. The second thing that happened was on my 13th birthday, I had this thought of what would it be like to live as a girl, and it never went away. Within a week of having that first thought, I realized I was transgendered. And I knew what that meant. I knew what I was going to have to do. But I was terrified to do it. Pretty much overnight, I went from feeling like nobody in the world cared about me for any reason whatsoever. And I was pulling myself out of that, smart enough at that point to realize that that wasn't true. And then I was like, oh, boom, I'm transgender. And I went from feeling like nobody cared to, if I let anybody know about this, I'm going to be hospitalized for being a freak. And that tormented me for good 6-7 years. Oh. And anyway, so that was the biggest thing that ever happened to me. And along the way, I also met a very good friend of mine, and he was actually the first person that I feel ever actually treated me like I was a human being. And so far, he's the only person who has actually sought out my attention. He used to come up to me at lunch every day and ask me if he could have one part of my lunch or another. And we eventually became, really great friends, and we still are. My high school, when I graduated, there was about 50 kids in my class. This is just kind of a rough estimate. I don't actually know for sure. And I was so closed off at that point that it actually took me, I moved in halfway through my 5th grade year, and I couldn't put names and faces together until about halfway through my 11th grade year. My entire high school career, I walked around in a sea of blank faces and gray people because I never looked, I never paid attention, I didn't care. All I wanted was for these people to leave me alone. Because when people got close to me, I got hurt or they got hurt. And I was tired of hurting. I was tired of making other people hurt. So I stayed away from everybody. Now, after I left high school, I joined the military for 3 years, and I think after about my first year in there, I was homeless. I lived out in the woods in a tent in the summers. I found places to stay in the winter, and every now and then I'd be able to move into some friend or another's house, actually move in there for a short period of time, a couple of months each time. And I have spent the majority of the last 6 years homeless. Now, I have since moved into the dorms at my local college, and I am taking classes and trying to better my life. But as I said, I want to help people. So I don't think I said that. I was talking about being inspirational, but I do. I want to help people. And the only way I know to do that is to get my views and opinions out there so other people can see what I've done, and hopefully they will be inspired by my story, which is honestly, I think, kind of boring. I don't understand the inspiration that people get from me, but if they get it, wonderful. That's all I want out of life, is to help people. If I inspire them in any way, that's great. I don't even care if I inspire them in a negative way. I have inspired somebody, I have changed their life somehow or other. That's worth it to me. Hopefully I'll inspire people in a positive way, but that remains to be seen. So I kind of rambled on a little bit longer than I thought here. You guys know basically what makes me me, so when you watch any of my future videos or the one other video I've done, you can kind of understand why I feel the way I feel. And I want to say this to kind of close it up. The biggest thing that I have come to realize is that you can't be afraid to be who you are. It's going to do nothing but hold you back and make your life miserable. I don't care who you are. If you're gay, if you're transgender, if you're... I don't care. If you feel that being you is a bad thing, you're probably wrong. And you can't live with that fear. You gotta find a way to change it. You gotta find a way to get around it. And I know it's difficult. I am still not over any of my fears at all. So, in a way, I guess I'm kind of being hypocritical here in telling everyone and telling the world to get over their fears when I haven't done mine, but I at least understand that I have to, and I am trying. So it's a process. Don't give up overnight. Stay true to who you are, follow your heart, and don't be afraid. Because otherwise you're going to end up a lonely shut-in living a miserable life. If you're afraid to be you, that kind of stuff will happen to you. You're just going to end up miserable in one way or another. So find a way to get over it, and I will try and help. Any advice that you guys can give on how to make my videos better, or if you have any questions about me or about being transgender, if you have any questions that you want to pose to me, put them in the comment section. I'll read through them. I will try and answer as many of them as I can. And I want to thank you for spending the 14 and a half minutes here to listen to me ramble on about my life. I hope I can help some people. And that's about it. Thanks for watching all the way through. Bye.